Good morning, ladies and gents. So today we're going to be going over what is good writing and what is bad writing and what's kind of in the middle there when it comes to our writing abilities and what do we expect as teachers from you to be able to produce inside the classroom, and if you're outside the classroom at home, what we still expect from you to be able to do. So we're going to be talking about that today. We're going to be looking at a couple of different examples of one example of bad writing, one example of decent writing with some major issues, and one example of really good writing. So these are all taken from my classes. If you are one of those people and you know it from going over it, then please make sure to take this as criticism as it is. I won't say any names. There will not be any names on the passages whatsoever. So take this as criticism and things to fix and change whenever you are going back through that today. All right, ladies and gents, let's go and dive into our examples. All right, ladies and gents, let's go ahead and dive into our first passage, which is going to be kind of our more, it's going to be our bad form of writing here. All right, you're going to see exactly what I mean as soon as we actually start reading it. Before we get into our reading, though, let's go ahead and read through our writing prompt to make sure we know exactly what we are supposed to be writing about. It starts off. Consider the way that the two articles, texting while driving, how dangerous is it, and study, distractions cause most car crashes, portray the controversy surrounding cell phone usage while driving. All right. So how did these two articles portray the controversy surrounding cell phone usage while driving? So what we are supposed to do: write an essay that compares and contrasts the two passages. All right. So we need to compare and contrast. Now, is that just going to be simply us putting down on one side of the page, this is all that this article wrote and this is all that this article wrote, or doing that in paragraphs? No, because what are we comparing and contrasting for? To evaluate the effectiveness with which each author supports the claim that cell phones should not be used while operating a car. That's what we should be looking for. How well do these two articles support the claim that cell phones should not be used while operating a car? That's what we should be looking for. This author supported their claim that cell phones should not be used while operating a car with this, this, and this. This article supported their claim, the same claim, with this, this, and that. You could say both of these are effective. You could say one's more effective than the other. You could say that neither one is effective. You have three positions here you can make, ladies and gents. Either they are both effective, they are both ineffective, or one is more effective than the other one at convincing you or you supporting your claim. Let's look at this passage here written by this student. I won't say any names of students, but let's go ahead and read it all the way through. You'll see very quickly why we consider this a bad essay. It reads, Michael and Ken use studies and analytics in their prompts to inform readers about how dangerous it is to do those things while driving, and they both came up with tests to see how text or doing other activities would have an big effect on you. Texting is on the rise, up from 9.8 billion messages a month in December 05 to 110.4 billion in December 08. Undoubtedly, more than a few of those messages are being sent by people driving cars. Is texting while driving a dangerous idea? We decided to conduct a test. Previous academic studies, much more scientific than ours, conducted in vehicle simulators, have shown that texting while driving impairs the driver's abilities. But as far as we know, no study has been conducted in a real vehicle that is being driven. Those sleep-deprived, multitasking drivers clutching cell phones, fiddling with their radios, or applying lipstick apparently are involved in an awful lot of crashes. Distracted drivers were involved in nearly 8 out of 10 collisions or near crashes, says a study released Thursday by the government. We see people on the roadways talking on the phone, checking their stocks, checking scores, fussing with their MP3 players, reading emails, all while driving 40, 50, 60, 70 miles per hour, and sometimes even faster, said Jacqueline Glassman, acting administrator of the government's Highway Safety Agency. Michael uses tests, but Ken doesn't. He read off of researchers, and the researchers only covers the analytics, while Michael's do more than that. So Michael do more convincing in the prompts. Michael worked on the driver's reaction times to a light mounted on the windshield, others safely, while Kin researchers studied the behavior of the drivers of 100 vehicles in metropolitan Washington. They tracked 241 drivers who were involved in 82 crashes of various degrees of seriousness. 15 were reported to police and 761 near crashes. Convincing that our lot of people are doing this, and they need to be focused while they go when crossing the street. Alright, so ladies and gents, we should already see a massive number of mistakes here in this passage. Let's talk about how we can go about fixing them, and what grade would this ultimately get if I were going to be really harsh and give it the most basic grade. Now, if this was given to me on the state test, I would probably give this at the very best a 3. And there's only one reason why I would give it a 3. One, there is evidence there. It's not used correctly. 2, they actually do state right here, Michael uses tests, but Kim doesn't. He read off of researchers, and the researchers only covers the analytics, while Michael's do more than that. So Michael do more convincing in the prompts. So they do actually make a claim that one author did this better than the other author because of what type of evidence they used. So they have a very basic, small thesis. It's tiny, it's weak, but it's arguably there. If I'm being nice, I could give this a 3 out of 12, possibly. That as an actual essay score would probably be around a 30. But there are massive mistakes throughout this entire large paragraph. For one, let's go ahead and go with them in seriousness. The first one I would argue is grammatically there are a ton of mistakes. As an English teacher, it makes me really want to roll my eyes. But we're not going to do that. Starting off, we have mistakes simple to fix, like using the author's first names. We should never do this. You do not know these authors, so you should not be on a first name basis with them. Instead, we should refer to them by their last names or by the articles that they created and produced. 2, the next major grammatical issue I see throughout this one is a simple fix when it comes to punctuation. Simple as that. Make sure that you're using commas, periods whenever you need to. Whenever you're using a direct quote, instead of using these parentheses, make sure that we are actively using our quotation marks. That's why we studied those last semester. All right. A quick note about that. For one, we should make sure that we are never actually using so much of a quote. Look how long this one is. It goes for that whole sentence, that whole line, that whole line there, a third line, part of the fourth line, and it goes directly into another direct quote right here, and it keeps going and going and going. That's almost the entire passage is directly quoted from somewhere else, from one of these passages, these articles. That proves to me 2 things. 1, either you didn't read it, or 2, you really just didn't take this seriously at all, and you decided, no, I'm just going to take from the passage and just direct quote it. I'll just copy and paste. That's not an essay, ladies and gents. This is a massive mistake. How can we go about fixing this? 1, we need to break it down into actual paragraphs, not just word vomit. So our first one we need to have is an introduction. Now that's where we need to start. And remember, with our introduction, we have 3 separate sections. We have our first section. It's going to be our hook. That's where we grab our reader's attentions. Our second section is going to be our lead in. Now our lead in, that takes the topic from our hook and ties it together with our thesis statement, which is going to be our third one. Third is going to be our thesis. Sometimes when you're growing up in middle school, maybe even last year, we called our thesis our claim sentence. What are we writing about? So we have these three sections that we need for an introduction. From there, we go to our body paragraphs. Body paragraphs can also be broken up into a couple different sections. One, we have topic sentences. What is this paragraph about? Two, we usually have some type of evidence. And three, we explain our evidence, especially if, as I know some of y'all have been learning the MELCON format, where you have the main idea, the lead in, the evidence, conclusion, things like that. This is where it's going to be really important. So we have the topic sentence, the evidence, and I'm just going to simplify it and just say the conclusion. At some point in there, we can also throw in our explanation of the evidence. Why is this evidence necessary? What does it prove? Remember, what we were trying to prove is that this author is either effective or ineffective at supporting the claim that cell phones should not be used while operating a car. So we have our introduction paragraph, body paragraph, and finally our conclusion paragraph. All right, and our conclusion is very simple. It's just a flip of our introduction, where we at first we restate the thesis. Two, we're going to go our lead out, where we get a little bit less general. We kind of find a way to get to that point where we're just like, and this is the end of our essay. And then three, we have our just kind of concluding statement. Especially when it comes to a writing prompt like this, it can be very simple. As simple as these two passages both support the idea and explain why cell phones should not be used while operating a car, period. Just a very generalized statement about the claim, why we shouldn't why we shouldn't text while driving or use our cell phones while driving. It's a simple, easy statement. These are our three main sections of any given essay, and this is what this student does not have. Now let's go ahead and look at a student who actually, they do have these three sections. They didn't do it very well. They had some major tone issues, but they do have at least these three sections. Let's go ahead and look at those now. This student now. Here we go. So this student, they did do everything pretty much correctly. It looks nice at the very least. It has an introduction, it has body paragraphs, it has a conclusion, but there are some major tone issues. And this is where I would say this student would more than likely, on a scale from 1 to 12, as we usually grade, would probably earn maybe a 6. If I'm really nice, maybe a 7 that day. But I would at least give this one a 6 because it covers our bases, but it doesn't do them very well. Let's go and look into it. It reads, "Today, I will be comparing and contrasting the two articles," and she named the two articles. Now already, ladies and gents, we are having a couple mistakes. For one, we do not need this personal pronoun I. We don't need it. I even put it in for my directions. Do not use personal pronouns like I and us and me. I do know us technically isn't a personal pronoun, but whatever. So today I will be comparing and contrasting. You don't need that. We already know from the writing prompt what you're supposed to be doing. We don't need this at all. Instead, what we need is a hook. We need an attention grabber. We need something to hook our readers. Give me a fact. Like texting while driving is proven to be more proves to cause more car crashes. Period. All right. Something simple. It brings up using your cell phone, and it brings up driving, which is what we needed to do. All right. So you need an actual hook, and that's one thing that this student does not have. Going on to the next sentence. They both give great detail and factual evidence into why it is not cool, necessary, or safe to text while driving. Okay, so we do have what the authors are doing. They provide and they both give great detail and factual evidence into why it is not cool, necessary, or safe to text while driving. The only thing that I would change with this one, I could get more nitpicky, of course, but just talking about as a whole, is using correct language. If I want to make it sound like I know exactly what I'm talking about, I'm not going to use words like cool. I need to sound a little bit more professional whenever I am speaking. So I would cut words that have relaxed tone, like cool, awesome, great. Those are, while they're good words, don't get me wrong, they are not proper words for us to use to create an effective tone. So we need to be really careful when we are picking our diction or our word choice. In my opinion, going on to the next sentence here, I'll go ahead and change colors. In my opinion, I do not think texting and driving is safe because not only does it put the active driver in danger, it also puts everybody around this driver at a risk too. Alright, so there are a couple things we can change here. For one, as I said already, we don't need these pronouns. Things like my, me, and us, things like that. We don't need to know your opinion, ladies and gents. We do not need that. So I'm going to go ahead and erase that. Also, it continues on, the I do not think. We don't need that, ladies and gents. We want a factual, direct statement. What can you actively say is true or false? It's ineffective or it's effective. That's all we need. So when we're looking at this statement, how we can fix it is just as I just took away those phrases. In my opinion, I do not think. Texting and driving is not safe, I should say, or is dangerous. Because not only does it put the active driver in danger, it also puts everybody around this driver at risk too. I don't need the A there. At risk too. Okay, nice, simple, direct. Now, is it a claim or a thesis statement? No, it's not. Because it does not answer our prompt, which says, write an essay that compares and contrasts the two passages to evaluate the effectiveness with which each author supports the claim that cell phones should not be used while operating a car. So it does not do that. It does not actively give us a thesis. Are they effective or are they not effective at supporting the claim? You do not say that. So it's not, there's no, already we see there's no thesis statement. Let's go look at the second paragraph. Driving is supposed to be a fast and efficient alternative to get to a specific destination without the work of actively walking. People drive daily to get to school, work, practices, grocery stores, road trips, or even an evening out with a friend. However, there are rules and regulations of the road that everyone should abide by to keep everyone safe. I have a quick little, my own quirk about using the word everyone twice. A little bit wordy, I would take one of those out. Keep people safe. Oftentimes, rules such as no drinking while and driving and no texting and driving are there because the people who have authority over the roads, or just say the government, know that some things, I would suggest changing, should wait because they could be a distraction. How she wrote it, are there because the people who have authority over the roads know that things that we have fun doing also can be considered a distraction. Unfortunately, there's a time and a place for everything, and sometimes things such as shooting a text can wait. So, how we can fix this and what this even looks like. Really, this doesn't look like a body paragraph. This looks like you're trying to introduce a topic. And where should introducing a topic go? Introducing a topic should go in the introduction, not the second or the first body paragraph. That's not where that should go. So I would suggest taking this whole paragraph, bringing it up one to the very front, and then just slapping on a thesis statement. These two authors are ineffective at supporting the claim that you should not use a cell phone while driving. All right, I've made my thesis statement. I can tack that on to that paragraph, and that works as a basic introduction. I don't need even this whole first paragraph. I could take that away and replace it with this second one. So you have to be really careful about things like that, ladies and gents. Maybe even reading them out loud can be really beneficial in something like this. Now let's look at our third paragraph, or what should be our first body paragraph here in this one. In the passage, texting while driving, how dangerous is it? Austin shows that previous academic studies, much more scientific than ours, conducted in vehicle simulators have shown that texting while driving impairs the driver's abilities. Okay, all right, so you brought up the passage and a quote from what they have said. Now what you should do is tell me, is this an effective way to support the claim, or is this not an effective way to support the claim? These types of evidence, this type of evidence. Instead, what she does, this passage also goes into great detail in showing how their experiment conducted that one of the lab rats, Brown's baseline reaction time at 35 miles per hour of 0.45 seconds worsened to 0.57 while reading a text, improved to 0.52 while writing a text. What? It doesn't make sense. What do you mean? How does that tie into your previous direct quote? I'll go ahead and tell you it doesn't. How you would fix this is make sure you stick to one factual or one direct quote. And when you have that direct quote, explain it. Why would you put that direct quote in there? Explain it in a sentence. Then after you've explained your first one, then you can go into another direct quote. You have to be really careful when you're picking these direct quotes and this evidence you're going to use to support your own statements, whether they're in effect. In our statements again should be, is the author effective or ineffective? We're judging them, we're grading them, remember, supporting their claim. I would honestly say that this is an effective way to support their claim. Simple as that. Another example of how effective they are at supporting their claim is with their factual statements, as seen in this direct quote. Then you have your second direct quote, the one that they even used. That's perfectly, there's a lot of great information there, but it's not put in the correct way. And I'm pretty sure they did not actually direct quote that correctly. This shows that whenever Brown was reading the text, his time went 12 seconds ahead. All right, already there's some grammatical, some sentence structure mistakes there, and I would suggest go ahead and taking that sentence out, that last sentence. There are tons of different ways we can fix this, ladies and gents. It just takes time and slowing down to do it correctly. Let's look at our last two paragraphs. They have another body paragraph and then our conclusion paragraph. In the passage, study, distractions cause most car crashes, Ken Thomas talks about how distracted drivers were involved in nearly 8 out of 10 collisions or near crashes, says a study released Thursday by the government. Okay, heck, that's a study given by the government. That should be effective, right? Do you say that? No, you don't. Instead, Ken also states, so you don't even explain your quote again. Ken also states that researchers said that the report showed the first links between car risks and a driver's activities, from eating and talking to receiving an email. All that even really, that didn't seem to really be a full statement, a full thought. Again, you go directly into another quote. There was a study that showed that drowsy driving increased the driver's risks of a crash or near crash by 4 times to 6 times, or 4 to 6 times. Again, you didn't explain that. You just went directly into that quote. How are you explaining that is an effective way to support the claim that you should not use cell phones while driving? You don't explain that at all, ladies and gents, and that's the mistake that we're having. You need to explain your direct quotes. The very last paragraph of this writing, this essay. Based on all of the textual evidence, we can see how texting really can be a distraction to drivers because they are not actively paying attention to the road, but are paying attention to the text message being sent. All right, now we can make that into a better statement by just simply taking away a couple of words. Heck, just taking off this first part of the sentence. Texting can be a distraction to drivers because they are not actively paying attention to the road, but are instead paying attention to text messages being sent. Period. Simple way of fixing it. In reality, getting to your destination safely should be your main priority when on the road. In my opinion, we don't need your opinion again. If there is specific information that is that important, I would suggest changing that a little bit, and needs to be sent immediately, then the person should receive a phone call, since that is available in cars now. All right. Now, already we don't refer back to what our claim that we're supposed to be talking about. Are they effective or ineffective? We don't bring up our two articles that we should have. We don't name our authors of the articles. We don't do. It's almost like this paragraph by itself could be completely separated from the rest of the essay. You need to have a really good connection through all of them. When you write a good essay, when you have the introduction, oh well, it's not writing on this one, but you need to have an introduction, body paragraphs, and conclusion. They should all tie together really well. How do they tie together really well? A lot of times we'll use transition words. We'll have basic ideas brought up in each one, so they have this form of cohesion throughout the entire essay. Now let's look at our very last essay. I'm going to go through this one a little bit faster. This one is well done. It's not perfect, and there are a couple of major mistakes we should fix, but at least it looks the part. It has great use of direct quotes of evidence from the text. There are still some major mistakes, and we're going to look at those really quickly. All right. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Texting while driving dramatically leads to more crashes. Perfect. Great. That's a great hook. It's a good one. When reading Texting while driving, how dangerous is it? And study, distractions cause most car crashes, not distractions. Simple fix there. The two passages give many examples and studies proving that texting while driving leads to more wrecks. Great. Okay. All right. You made a good statement. All right. Now you need to make your claim. Are they effective at supporting that claim that you should not use a cell phone while driving or not? Are they effective? You don't put that. Instead, you say, though those paying attention to the road are involved in a less amount of wrecks. That just seems like you're trying to tie on to the other sentence. It doesn't really work here. Michael Austin and Ken Thomas do different studies and tastings to see for themselves what the outcomes would prove. Now remember, y'all, this is where our thesis statement should be, but we're making our claim. Yes, the authors are effective at supporting their claim that cell phones should not be used while operating a car. That's all you really need. Or the authors are ineffective at supporting their claim. Or this author is more effective. You don't do that. You don't have a thesis statement. There is no thesis here. There is no thesis. That's the issue I have here in this writing. Now, overall, it had a good hook. It had a decent lead in, but there is no thesis. And our thesis is our most important part of our essay. Now, let's look at the body paragraphs. And this is where I believe this student shined. And they do get to a claim, but they just didn't make it into their thesis. In texting while driving, how dangerous is it? They need to make sure that they are using quotation marks, since they are quoting an article. The author does a very good job of finding evidence to prove his point that texting while driving is very dangerous. Okay, hey, you made a claim. That's a good topic sentence. I know that's what you're going to be talking about for the rest of the paragraph. The author describes the difference of phone usage while driving from the past and the now, and it proved that we are on our phones way more than we were in the past years. So I get what you're trying to say, that the author proved with basic information that at one point in 05, I believe it was, we had fewer text messages being sent, and now, and I think it was 08, we have a ton more messages being sent. I get what you're trying to say. This is where you could have used direct quotes and evidence to really support your little point here, because it does prove the author is effective at proving it, backing up, supporting their claim. but you should have used direct quotes. Michael Austin even goes as far as doing his own studies of the different reacting times of when someone is paying attention to the road and when someone is texting or reading a text. The study found that when texting or reading a text as an huge impact on your reaction time and would lead to more wrecks. A couple mistakes here, of course. For one, we should actually pull the direct quote and use it here. So we need our direct quotes being used in the actual right before the sentences. You need to explain those direct quotes. That's where you would have this sentence. But you need the actual quote next to her, nearby. You have that somewhat in the next sentence. In the passage, it states, in our test, neither subject had any idea that using his phone would slow down his reaction time. Text messaging distracts any driver from the road. Okay, you do use it. I do think you could have used a little bit more of a directed quote there. You do have something there, but you definitely need one up here for this sentence. And I would suggest moving that second direct quote around a little bit to make it a little bit more impactful how you use it. But you do have it. It's a couple good basics there we could really build on. I would say there's fewer mistakes in this one than our previous two. Next paragraph, next body paragraph. In study, distractions cause most car crashes. The passage gives us an understanding that even when people are flying down the interstate, they are still checking their phones going 70 miles per hour or faster. You made a claim from that this is what the author is saying. You need to back it up with a direct quote in some way. You would even, right here, I believe in the passages, they actually say going 40, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. You could actually add that right there instead of just putting your own statement. So that's what I would do. Some studies that the author referenced, always going back to what the author's doing, found that when drivers weren't paying attention to the road, changed the passage up a little bit. You can take that out if you need to. Add a couple periods, ellipses. Led to an estimated 25% of crashes on the road. Okay, so there you actually do use a good direct quote and use it in the sentence, which is a really good use of good way of using it. But you need to actually use your ellipses. You need to you don't need this comma here at all. There's a couple things you can work around with that. Even being drowsy on the road increases your chances of a crash by 4 to 6 times. You don't need the more likely there at the last one. Now that's again a direct quote, that information taken from the passage. You need to actually use direct quotes. If you're paraphrasing it a little bit, make sure to give that paraphrase to the author. In Study Distractions, you said the author's name, I believe, is Ken Thomas. Yeah, Ken Thomas says, or quotes in his passage, that being distracted or being drowsy even while driving can increase your likelihood of crashing multiple times, or 4 to 6 times. The author gives a pretty good job at proving his point. Now, we talked about a little bit of tone issue there. Gives a pretty good job. You can move that around, make it a little bit more impactful. The author provides evidence that supports his point that when you are not focused, Y-O-U-R, you're not focused on the road, you're more likely to end up in a wreck. In the passage it states, and then they give this final statement. So overall, it's not bad. They have a little bit more targeted direct quotes. They use them in a little bit more effective manner, this student. There are still some major mistakes, but we're getting better and better as we go along, especially from the first one to the second one, now to our third one, which is using evidence in a much better way. Let's go to our very last sentence of this student. For some reason it is acting a little bit funny, but we'll get We'll get it done. When comparing and contrasting the two passages, so apparently they wanted to, how we can see this now, they went talking about the first article, the second article. Now they're going to compare the two articles, hopefully with how effective they are at convincing or at supporting their claim. When comparing and contrasting the two passages, both authors do a very good job at proving their claims. Good. It's a good statement. Both gave, when comparing and contrasting the two passages, maybe something just messed up there. Both gave different studies and the finding that came out of them. I think you could fix that a little bit. Both studies or both articles provided differing studies to prove their claim or support their claim. Though the author of Texting While Driving, How Dangerous Is It? You can actually name him, did a bit better of a job. You don't need the bit there. Remember, we need to have very strong opinions. Did a better job of I'd say here, did a better job of explaining and giving thorough information or evidence of his findings. The key element to driving safely is keeping your eyes and your mind on the road. Direct quote from him. That's perfectly good. Make sure you reference this is where that came from. Though when reading both passages, it's very easily understood that doing anything other than driving on the road will lead to terrible outcomes. In conclusion, Michael Austin did a very good job at supporting his claim, and Ken Thomas did a pretty good job at supporting his claim. Again, we could change that at supporting his claim. While Ken Thomas also supported his claim, just a little bit more ineffective, or he wasn't as effective at supporting his claim. When driving, here's going to be our lead out. When driving, if you are not paying attention to the road, you could end up in a wreck. In the both passages, come on now, in both passages, not in the both, the readers can clearly understand that that you should always be focused on the road at all times. You don't really need the at all times, since you already said they should always be focused on the road, period. So, while this student did do better, there are still major mistakes. This student, I would argue, would maybe earn anywhere between, if I'm feeling kind of mean, a 75, if I think they did pretty well. And I do think they did decently, at least, compared to a lot of students. I would think this would probably earn around an 83, 84 or so. So, those are our three different types of reading. We saw a bad form of writing, a bad example of writing with this essay. We saw a better looking one, but still major tone issues and poor use of evidence. And finally, this third one, which, while it did have its own issues with the thesis, it does explain how effective the authors are. And it has great use of evidence, even if we do have some major grammatical issues as well throughout it. All right, ladies and gents, that's everything I have for you today. Go ahead and start rewriting your essays. We are trying to get them better now. You see the mistakes that your fellow students have done. See what you can do and change in your own writing. All right, ladies and gents, have a good day.